We're going to dive into a conversation which I believe is deeply important because of what seem to be, and probably not what seem to be, but are very turbulent times. So I think these are times that are very unlike we haven't seen in generations. So I think if you have felt like the weight of the world recently, the chaos, the uncertainty, the collective anxiety, you're really not alone. We're all feeling this stuff. And I think this is another thing that's really important in having a conversation like this is the honesty, really the openness, because we are all feeling, something, even if it's the uncertainty. Um, there's many traditions, many cultures who would actually suggest we're actually living in the days of prophecy. And, you could take the Hindus as an example. They would call this, they would say we're in Kali Yuga, a time of disillusion, where old systems crumble and they make way for something new. And this is part of the exciting bit for me. Even if you look at this from, not such a large scale cosmic cycle, but even a smaller cycle, such as like the fourth turning, like an 80-year cycle, 420 periods, 420-year cycles. And we would be in the fourth turning. So we're even in the end cycle of that, which is marked by the breaking down of societal norms and structures. So it doesn't really matter, as far as I'm concerned, which lens you're using. There is a truth that remains. We are in a period of great change. And that's what makes these times really extraordinary. These times, as challenging as they are also times of what I would say are unparalleled spiritual opportunity. And interestingly, even in the face of all this upheaval, all this this transformation often begins in very unexpected ways. It's not always, grand gestures or some monumental shift. It can start like a moment of discomfort or an act of compassion. I think sometimes the chaos we see in the world reflects back to us in smaller, more personal experiences. I think experiences that give us a chance to step into who we're meant to be. And I'll give you a bit of an example. This is something I shared on my Facebook page recently. It was about a very restless night bus journey. And I deliberately chose this. So I live in Scotland, and I was going down to London to run some events. And I knew I could book the train during the daytime, 6 hours to London from Scotland, comfortable enough. Or if I wanted to go and arrive the same day, I could take the overnight sleeper and leave Scotland, something like 10 o'clock at night. The train's very slow but very comfortable. You can book a cabin with a bed, and it's a 11-hour overnight sleeper journey. Very comfortable. In America, you think Greyhound. Here in the UK, we think National Express, stuff like that. Maybe in other parts of the continent in Europe, Flexibus as an example. Flexibus. Not very comfortable. But I deliberately chose the night bus over the sleeper train because discomfort in itself has a way of teaching us things, right? So I was traveling from Dundee in Scotland to London, England on an overnight service that stops a couple times an hour. The lights are flickering on and off. Passengers are shuffling around. It was very fragmented and disjointed. And I feel that's what the world feels like at the moment. So after getting on the bus, I put on my headphones, I start listening to an audiobook about shamanism. It's talking about visionary guidance, about seeking connection to something bigger than ourselves. It really spoke to me, so much so, I paused the audiobook and I decided to drop into deep meditation right there on the night bus. And, to seek visionary guidance. And the guidance was on interconnectedness of reality. This is always something that I want to go deeper with, because, I feel like we're all modern mystics. And here we are living in this modern world of duality. And we're doing our best. We're doing our very best to see through the eyes of unity while doing that. So for me, this is an ongoing study, that interconnectedness of reality. So I wasn't expecting to get my answer during the bus journey itself, but as we all know, life has a way of surprising you. So at one of the many, many, many stops of this very long 11-hour overnight night bus, the driver stopped to let passengers off and on and off at this one particular stop. I think it was probably maybe Stirling in Scotland, so past Edinburgh. And just as he was about to close the door and pull away, a man appeared and started banging on the door. So the driver opens the door and the guy starts complaining that he'd been left behind by another bus. He got off the bus to have a quick smoke, to have a cigarette, turned around and the bus was driving off without him. So, he stood at the door explaining this to the driver. Everything that he had was on that other bus: his wallet, his phone, his jacket, luggage, everything. He was stranded and he was begging for help from the driver. When the driver just looked at him and said, "Not my problem." It was so surreal. It must have been, I don't know, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. I was sitting in the seat right behind the driver, so I watched it all unfold. The guy begging for a phone call or just some kind of help, and the driver wouldn't budge. And the driver was stuck in this mindset of it's not my job. he was thinking like an individual. And the man begging for help, it was weird. He explained to the driver the bus was heading to London, and the bus I was on was also heading to London. And the kicker was, it was the same bus company, same destination. So here's this man, he was a stranded man, but he wasn't asking to get on the bus. It was so weird. It was the same bus company, same destination, as I just said. It was like he was too proud or too afraid to break some unwritten rule that said he had to figure it out on his own. His only focus was getting the bus driver to make a phone call and not burdening the driver to let him on the bus. I mean, if it was me and I could see it was the same bus company going to the same destination, I'd simply be asking to get on the bus. But this guy wasn't doing that. It just seemed so weird. So I felt he was also thinking like an individual, not like we're part of a collective. And that's, part of the challenge of this age as well, is that individualism, where if you make a mistake, you have to shoulder the burden, in most cases on your own. That's how it feels. So finally, I just thought, I just can't sit here. So I leaned forward and, I actually took off my jacket. I took off my jacket, I leaned forward, and I said, "Hey, do you want my jacket?" I'm holding my jacket out. I'm holding my jacket out to this guy. And he looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. He finally said, "What?" And I said, "Do you want my jacket?" And I'm like holding my jacket right up to the guy. He shook his head. He was like, "No, no, 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 no." Backing away from the jacket. I don't know, stuck in this belief that he had to bear this burden on himself. I was on the bus. It wasn't the warmest bus, but I'd be fine. I wasn't out in the elements. It was cold that night. It would have been. It wasn't freezing. There was no snow, but you needed a heavy jacket. And this guy didn't have a jacket. He had shirt on, no jacket. All this stuff is on the other bus. That's now, zoomed off into the night. So I continued to watch and listen as he continued to beg the driver to help him out by calling his controller, his supervisor, whoever could help. But the driver just made it very clear it was not his job to drive. It was his only job was to drive the bus. So I then I grabbed a sweater from my bag. I said, "How about this? Do you want my sweater?" So I'm, holding my sweater up to this guy, and he's like, but again, he refused. And the driver's not letting him on the bus. And this is the middle of nowhere. I'm just like thinking to myself, why is everybody trying to burden everything themselves? Like, it was crazy. So I continued, to listen to this man plead to the driver to make a phone call. But again, the driver just wasn't budging. He made it clear the man would have to find a way to deal with it on his own. And I was stunned. In my head, it was like, the guy has no phone, though. The guy has no wallet. He's in the middle of nowhere. He's going to deal with the situation. How is he going to deal with the situation without a phone, without money, in the middle of nowhere? And he's going to freeze. This was, like I said, 1 o'clock at night. Finally, I leaned forward to the driver and I said, he's going to London. We're going to London. There are empty seats. Just let the guy on the bus. And I think this must have really started the driver. He just kind of blankly looked at me for a few seconds before finally looking at the guy, gesturing to him to get on the bus. It was such a fragmented, disjointed experience. It was the plague of individualism on full display. I just shook my head in total disbelief, lovingly, of course, but I just shook my head. And after the bus started moving, I can hear the reserve driver. So, on these long distance bus journeys, these overnight bus journeys, there's two drivers. I think typically in the UK, there's two drivers anyway. So you have the driver, and then you have the reserve driver, and they take turns driving every couple of hours. So I hear the reserve driver jump into action, and he starts making some phone calls. He even walked to the back of the bus where the guy sat down and loaned this guy a jacket and was actually trying to help him out. And then the vibe on the bus, you could feel it. You could just feel it. It started to change. I could actually sense people were moved by what they were witnessing. And what happened at the next stop was really interesting. So we make the next stop, and right before we get there to the next stop, the relief driver is now communicating with the guy that missed the other bus. I said, look, we've been in contact with the controllers. They're in contact with the other bus. We're going to see what we can do for you. And everybody overhears this. Everybody's overhearing this. And so we get to the next stop, and people are getting off the bus, and that's their destination, so they're getting off. And then somebody gives a tip to the driver. And the driver, I just sitting there looking at him. He's looking at this tip in total disbelief. And then when everybody who's now getting on the bus from that stop get on the bus, the relief driver comes up and says, "What was all that about?" And the driver says, "Somebody just tipped us." And I was wondering why that was strange, because I grew up in America. That's the kind of thing we would do. But he said, maybe for a tour bus driver or something like that, because this is a service bus. Nobody ever tips service drivers. And they were both like, "Whoa, I wonder why that happened." And I was I was just thinking, I could understand why it happened, because people were moved. People were moved to see that, there was people who were willing to step out of their comfort zones and actually help somebody that was in need of help. So, but just to kind of round off the story, when I put my headphones back in and I put my eye mask on, I started doing the Ho'oponopono. And I was clearing the energy. I was taking responsibility and clearing the energy to help reunite this guy with his stuff. And by the time we got to London, the man did get his stuff back. It was interesting. They were both buses going to London, but one had a slightly different route. And the guy that missed his, that his bus left without him, that bus got delayed by traffic and wound up to be about 10 minutes behind us by the time we got to London. And when we got off at the stop in London, the guy's there standing there waiting for his stuff to come to him. It was pretty interesting experience. So, but I don't think it was about him being reunited with his belongings. It was about connection. It was about seeing each other as human beings. That night wasn't just a bus ride. It was a reminder that when we step out of our own little bubbles, we can create moments of real collective care. And I think that's what's really important, is feeling you actually have a right to care. When I think about, that night bus, it hits me how much it ties into stuff I've been reflecting on lately. We live in crazy times. Everything feels very chaotic, like the world's falling apart. But I think there's something deeper going on. It's challenges of these times. They're pushing us to grow, to wake up to something bigger. And the bus ride was an example of that. The world, like I said, can feel fragmented and disconnected and straight up cold sometimes. Like the way the driver was just brushing off the man's problems. It was this not my problem attitude that's very common now. It's this illusion we've been taught to believe we're all on our own, that we don't owe each other anything. But that night, it reminded people that that's just not true. It showed how small actions can break through those walls. So, I mean, something like offering the guy my jacket or a sweater, it wasn't about keeping him warm, was it? Not really. It was about saying, I see you. You're not alone in this. And what happened after that, that simple shift, just letting him on the bus, changed everything. The reserve drivers, starting to helping, the whole vibe on the bus softening, people starting to see the humanity in the situation. It was like that idea of the ripple in the pond. We drop a stone in the pond, where one act of compassion inspired more. And that's what I'm talking about how the turbulence of these times is an opportunity. It's a call to live differently, to show up with compassion, and let the energy of compassion ripple out into the world. That night, the bus ride wasn't just about getting to London. It was this little microcosm of life, a lesson, of breaking through the isolation and remembering that we are a collective. And I think a lot of us are feeling that more than ever. And I get it. These turbulent times, they can feel overwhelming. I feel overwhelmed sometimes. I've got a family. I've got 5 kids. I've got 3 adult kids, who are going out and exploring life, outside the nest. And I've got 2 little ones, one age 4 and one age 9 months. So, and you could say I fall into the ADHD category. There's a lot of things, that that seem to be puts me into that category. And here I am, a father of 5, husband. I can feel overwhelmed. I can have this feeling of, I just need to get through this. That kind of mindset, instead of, I really need to connect with this. I really need to be present for this. This is the journey I'm on as a husband, as a father, and as a guide. I need to be present with these times. I need to be present with this turbulence. When life feels like it's spinning out of control, whether it's global events, a personal crisis, the weight of the world, it's very easy to feel powerless, like a victim of circumstances beyond our reach. We see the news, we feel the ripple effects of other people's decisions, decisions we didn't make. And we wonder, what can I possibly do about any of this? I feel these ways. For me, this is when the idea of flipping the script really comes in handy. Instead of staying stuck in that sense of helplessness, I see interconnectedness. And again, this is why I study it. This is why I live it. To see these moments as sacred opportunities, not as punishments. It's not about for me, it's not about denying the challenges or pretending everything is okay. It's about stepping into into these issues, into these challenges, into these problems, recognizing the mess, that it's messy, but there's a chance to grow, to shift, to align with something greater. And now I'll really do my best to get to the heart of this. This is about recognizing that within us is the ability to shapeshift. We have this ability to shapeshift, to transform this sense of victimhood into something really sacred, like a kind of volunteerism. And there are some traditions that talk about this, like a sacred volunteerism. It's saying yes to the opportunity to grow, to change, and to evolve, even when it means letting go of parts of yourself that used to feel like such a big deal, parts that defined who you thought you were. And that was fine for these other parts of our lives, these other chapters of our lives. And even letting those parts go, it's not easy. It's like taking apart a part of piece. It's taking yourself apart, like piece by piece, like in a shamanic death ritual. But in that breaking down, there's power. It's where you create space to build, to shift, into a version of yourself that's more real and more aligned with, who you're becoming. It's about trusting the process and leaning into it, even when it feels uncomfortable. It's where the transformation happens. How can I sum this up? It's like, the world's turbulence, it isn't here to destroy you. It's here to wake you up. And when you learn to lean into it with a courage, you start to realize the role you can play, not just in your own growth, but in evolution, the evolution of everything around you. Let me just kind of cast back to that night bus, I think, one more time, because for me, there were so many lessons. I had hours to kill, but as much as it was restless, deliberately choosing that discomfort over the comfort of the train, I wasn't just looking to pass time. I wasn't just looking for that easy ride to London where I could sleep, just rest. I wanted that disruption, that discomfort in itself to push me, so I meditated. There was 2 hours at one point of dipping in and out of meditation, really deep stuff, very light stuff because of the conditions, asking for guidance, opening myself up. And the thing was that I really felt, there was other guidance coming through. It wasn't just about sitting quietly and meditating on stillness or losing awareness of the bus, the other people, getting into pure awareness. For me, meditation isn't about escaping the chaos. It's about grounding myself in the chaos so I can hear what's trying to come through, It was, I think that's what I was doing. I was tuning into that deeper flow, listening for something beyond the noise of the world. And then the lesson showed up. Not in some grand vision, but in real life, right there on the bus. A man in need, a driver who wouldn't help, and me with a choice, to stay quiet, to stay comfortable, or to step into action. That's the Dharma right there. The Dharma, living your truth while in harmony with the universe. And that's why I think, these three spiritual practices that I want to discuss tonight align you with, the unique energy of this era. Meditation, astral projection, healing work, they help you see it. These practices align you with your purpose, with the moment itself, so you can act from a place of clarity and compassion. Deep meditation, what does it do? It gives us stillness, grounding, amidst the noise. Helps us align with the infinite, to remember who we truly are. There's so many ways to meditate. Astral projection, oh gosh, I mean, this is one that's really dear to me because I teach it, and this is a wonderful full circle for me, like I said, to Flow, because Flow was a student of mine at one point. And it's so beautiful to see, how he's grown into being a guide himself. And the astral projection, it allows us to transcend the limits of the physical, to confront our fears and explore higher dimensions of existence. It's a powerful practice. And then we have healing work. This one's huge, because let's face it, the world itself, look at it. We're all in this. The world is hurting. And although I have a very comfortable life, I have a beautiful space, as you can see, part of it behind me now. There's much more to it that way, including my ritual altar space. You could say I meditate in an ivory tower. But when the world is hurting, why should I not be a part of it? You know, that man on the bus, he wasn't just cold and stranded. He was disconnected, lost in the illusion that he had to do, everything alone. For me, healing work isn't just about curing physical wounds. It's about it's about mending those invisible breakages in this web of connection that we're all connected to. Offering my jacket, speaking up to the driver, it wasn't just kindness, it was an act of healing for him, for the driver, even for me. It reminded everyone that was on that bus what compassion looks like. And that ripple of care changed the entire vibe. So, we ask ourselves, how do these practices then align with the energies of this time? And I selected these three purposely. When everything is breaking down, whether it's systems of power, societies, norms, our personal identities, I really believe there's an opening for profound growth. The chaos itself becomes very fertile ground for transformation. This is where the spiritual work happens, and it's why the practices we'll explore are so important. The turbulence of this age aligns perfectly with the practices that help transcend fear. Fear, they will help cultivate clarity, and they will help us step into our highest potential. These practices are not random, like I said. They are precisely the energies of this time that this time are calling for. And I don't just see these practices as tools. I actually see them as gateways. They help us navigate the chaos of the outer world while forming the inner world. And I think some of you might remember from our first webinar together here on Soul Guides. My spare bedroom are a spare bedroom for when people stay over. That's the space where I do my astral projection work, my astral projection practice, and I have a beaded curtain, and that beaded curtain has the symbol of a big dream catcher on it. It's very colorful, and I've sprayed essences, plant essences, flowers, and herbs onto those beads. And I treat that space as a portal. Like I said, sometimes I'll stand there in front of those beads at that doorway, at that threshold between ordinary reality and non-ordinary reality, and I'll ask myself very deep questions like, am I worthy of being in this space tonight? This really well curated space for astral projection. You know, that space is very sacred to me. I don't want to just barge through those beads without thinking. I don't want to cross that threshold without showing tremendous respect. That space to me is hallowed ground. It's a sacred space. So, and when I go into that space, this isn't for me, it's not about escapism. It's not about hiding from the chaos. It's about stepping in fully with the tools, the practices, the clarity to navigate the chaos, the turbulence with grace. It's about aligning with the energies of this age and finding my place within this great collective unfolding, because that's what it is to me. It is a collective unfolding. It is truly for me, it is a mystery. As much as I've learned, I still feel like a baby of consciousness. And I see myself as a vessel for the great mystery. I know there's so much I don't know. And I'm comfortable with that. I'm really comfortable with that. I don't think I've ever been more comfortable with that in my entire life. And I think it's a level of grounding that I know has come from these three practices. There's so many modalities, there's so many spiritual practices out there, but for me, these are three that are important to me, and that's why I want to share them. I know some of you, the ones of you who are in soul guides in particular, this is stuff that's important to you too. The astral projection, that's why you're in that group. But you're not just there for the tools that flow is provided for you. You're there for that community too. And that's what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about that shift from individualism to this shift back to collectivism. So, we look at deep meditation. It's a game changer. I think especially now when the world is so noisy, so chaotic. Meditation is giving you that space to detach from all the external madness and reconnect with who you really are. That infinite, unchanging essence of who we are, that essence of that part of you that precedes birth and that part of you that survives death. And for me, it's like finding the calm in the eye of a great storm. That's what these tools do for me. When I meditate, I step into clarity and truth. When we start responding not from a place of fear, but from wisdom. What am I trying to say here? It's like that sacred responsibility of not denying our fears, our problems, the horrors that we see in the world, We're only denying their ultimate power over us and over our light. I think the last time I was on here, I also mentioned like Galadriel as an example, in the Hobbit films and the books, and Galadriel is there at Dungle Door, is it? Um, this abandoned fortress, and there's Sauron who's taken form of like a necromancer, and she's like, "You have no power here. You're formless, you're nameless. Go back into the void from where you came." She's not denying the evil. She's not denying the distortions. She's just denying its power over her light. For astral projection, this practice lets us explore the soul's infinite nature firsthand. Firsthand. That's one of its most important aspects. You get to explore the soul's infinite nature firsthand. We literally go beyond the physical world and explore higher dimensions of existence. That fractal self. It can be a little bit intimidating at first, the fear of sleep paralysis or worrying you won't come back. But it's in facing those fears we learn courage and trust and surrender. These are exactly the kind of qualities we need to handle everything life is throwing at us right now, in the physical world. And back to healing again. This is about letting go of the past, the old patterns, the wounds, and beliefs that really weigh us down. I recall a couple of years ago, there was an issue I was having, and I remember saying something to my wife. I can't remember what I said, but what she said next really it stuck with me. She's like, "The world's hard enough without you lumping even more onto it right now, putting even more on your shoulders by, with what you're saying." And she just grounded me really nice and firmly. In that moment, it was what I needed. It was medicine. We can't move forward into something new while still carrying all that old baggage. And that's why I love practices, healing work practices like the Ho'oponopono, especially the Ho'oponopono. It's a self-forgiveness practice that helps really release resentment, guilt, tension. And no, forgiveness work, like I think sometimes people get caught up with, it doesn't mean saying the harm was not okay, whoever got hurt. But it is about freeing yourself and aligning with the divine. It's like dropping those chains. You can finally move forward lighter and freer. When the original Ho'oponopono practice, the original Hawaiian practice, decades and decades ago, for a very long time, was a community practice. But can you imagine how hard that would have been? The kahunas, the spiritual leaders and healers of those days, bringing entire communities together to heal, bringing people together who were harmed, people brought together who did the harming, somebody having to face their accuser, somebody having to face their abuser. Can you imagine holding a space for a community like that? That's big work. So, there would have been a lot of spiritual preparation involved before these gatherings even took place. And that's why, one of the modern kahunas, she updated the Ho'oponopono practice to be a personal practice between you and the divine, between you and the divine. And that's kind of cool in my eyes because it then brings it into the realm where no other human beings, nobody else's actions matter to your self-forgiveness practice. It doesn't matter if somebody's showing remorse. It doesn't matter if somebody's offering you forgiveness. None of that matters anymore. those blocks to love do not matter anymore because it's between you and the divine. And that's why I align things like my healing work with astral projection. Because as powerful as healing work is in body, just imagine how powerful healing work is in these states beyond the conscious mind, where we're dealing with the subconscious realm, the superconscious realm, where you can experience that interconnectedness. I think the last time I was on here with everyone, I shared an experience where I had a chronic pain in my shoulder for years. And I remember entering this deep meditation, leaving my body, and I was being shown my etheric body. So I was probably in my astral body, and I was being shown my etheric body. Even if you could say it was a lucid dream, it didn't matter. It was being shown my etheric body, my energy body, that vessel that is a conduit that sits between the higher dimensions and the physical body. It's the prana body. So I was being shown that, and I could see that dark patch on the shoulder, and I knew that was the underlying energy that was causing the physical pain. And in that experience, I was being shown exactly what I needed to do. It was the etheric space around me was just filled with information, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. And I put my hands over that space, and I just followed the instructions I was being given, the downloads I was being given. And I started doing healing work. And by the time I was finished, here I am out of body doing this powerful healing work. That dark space had now become light. And I shifted back into my body, and the pain was gone. Instantaneous healing. It was gone. It did not resurface. This was a good 15 years ago. It's never come back. Flo, how are we doing on time?
We have another 10 minutes until we can start doing questions and answers. I think what you shared was really powerful. And, we have examples from our students as well who have done similar things where they're able to heal certain things through the astral. Things like healing their kidneys or joint diseases. And it's just really, it's so amazing how when we step beyond the physical, we have access to more tools, more access to ourselves, and direct access as well, where it's like it's instant. We're going straight to the core where the energetic shift isn't in a line in the right way.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm taking a sacred pause here. I think, sometimes we have to really allow the integration. We live in a society now where everything becomes a meme within minutes. Within minutes. There's no dipping into an archive where, we have to make the space. We have to create the space. And even having a discussion like this, there needs to be space in a discussion like this. People need to process what's being said, because there's things that are being felt at the same time. When I do retreats, when I run my retreats, there can be sometimes when I've shared things, and I'll just drop down onto my knees and I'll sit in front of my students and I'll just close my eyes, and I might be there for 10 minutes and they're just going to have to drop into that space with me. But I'm not I'm not going to make everybody do that now. But it doesn't mean I don't feel it. So why don't we go ahead into questions now? There's only a few minutes anyway, so I'm happy to give more time to questions. I think Q&A is my absolute favorite part of these experiences, because it brings more voices to the table. And it can take us in so many directions.
If you want to take part in our Q&A and speak to us directly, then make sure to join our Soul Guides Premium membership. In Soul Guides Premium, you have access to our 12 weeks Astral Projection program, teaching you step by step how to have out-of-body experiences on demand, along with the most advanced soundtracks to get you into the right state, and weekly coaching and live events where we can help you with your practice on a personal level when you get stuck. We are really passionate about out-of-body experiences and the exploration of consciousness. So when you join our premium community, we'll make it our mission to support you on your journey to make sure that you get out of body consistently. Check out the link below this video. So then, yeah, we can get started now. Right. So we have Sonia first, and then Dipti.
Thank you, Falcon. That was beautiful. And I already had a Ho'oponopono meme made many years ago, so it's funny that you said that right after I put it in the chat. And I had replaced the word "I'm sorry" with "apologize," because after really kind of feeling, that prayer and what the experience that you shared about it, it is very personal, and for me, it goes when you're doing it. You don't need the medium of your body. You can do it energetically, and that person also gets it. But my question is, because of all these strong energy shifts that we're going through, on our planet and what's happening in the ethers, I really have never done any formal shadow work, so I don't know, what that is or what it could be, but I am feeling it and I am doing it. So my question is, what questions can I ask myself to really go deeper, in shadow work, so I can clear the space for these new energies to fill up those empty spaces?
Sure thing. So first I'll say, with the Ho'oponopono, seeing how you brought that back into the conversation, it's only the popularized version of the Ho'oponopono that uses those 4 phrases. Not even Dr. Hugh Lin, before he connected with Dr. Joe Vitale, did those 4 phrases mean anything to the Ho'oponopono. Those ideas were part of the Ho'oponopono for sure. As Dr. Lin said, all those phrases are contained within the one phrase of "I love you." Love contains everything. So when I'm doing my Ho'oponopono practice, I don't even, if I do choose to use those phrases, I'm not even using those phrases in the order that most people, have become aware of them. The phrasing is usually, "I'm sorry, please forgive me, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you." In Dr. Hugh Lin's original work, before he connected with Dr. Joe Vitale, he would work exclusively with the inner child. the inner child being the subconscious. And the first thing he would do before he brought a problem, to the altar of healing, he would connect to the inner child. He would create warm feelings around his heart center, and he would connect with the inner child. Because in the older tradition of the Ho'oponopono, it was through the inner child where the petition of remorse, of forgiveness, was then made to the divine. And this is one reason when I teach the Ho'oponopono, I like to teach the more traditional approach. I really value the 4 phrases and the on-the-go kind of process that gives you. You could be on a train, you could be on a plane, you could be in an automobile, in the face of chaos, and you can just drop right into those 4 phrases. But for my deeper healing work, I love to go to the traditional Ho'oponopono. And I know the traditional is bringing the community together, but I at least take from it what I can from the old tradition. And so I connect with the inner child. For me, I go a little bit further. I like to use other traditions, other processes to make things even more personal for me. So when I'm there connecting with the inner child, creating these warm feelings, I'll borrow something from Buddhism, like the inner smile meditation. And so now I'm smiling inwardly to the inner child. In the Buddhist tradition, you would smile at maybe an organ like the lungs, and you would smile warmly at the lungs, like if there were, an imbalance with the lungs, and then you would wait for the lungs to smile warmly back at you. Now you have that oneness, that connection. So, I'll sit there and I'll connect to the inner child, create these warm feelings, opening my heart, send this warm inner smile to the inner child, wait for it to smile back. And it's at this point, I will probably then bring an energetic record, to the table. So I'm going to engage in this shadow work. And for me, simply, I can just ask my guides in that moment. And this is what I love about the reality that we live in. Somebody has the answer. Somebody has the information. Somebody has the data. And I've been out of body so many times now, probably more than 1,000 conscious times as an adult. And when I mean conscious, I'm talking about when I'm out of body, I know who I am. I know my name. I can remember where I left my physical body during the practice. It's on the sofa this time. It's lying there on the sofa, in an east-west orientation in Dundee, Scotland, 21st century Earth. I've got waking consciousness in that moment while out of body in another dimension of reality. And I've been able to meet what we'd call guides, ultimately soul family. Some of them are advanced versions of us. There's a lot going on, but when we're beyond the physical realm on these higher dimensional levels, all this information opens up to us. We just know, almost like we know everything. Everything is within reach if we want to tap into something. So here I am, very much in my body, going into the Ho'oponopono, going into shadow work, and I'll say, bring me the energetic record. Let's say there's some tension between me and my wife, as an example. And it's a reoccurring theme, reoccurring problem. So I'll sit there and I'll say, bring me the energetic record. And I'll imagine them bringing it to me like the inner child. And I hold it to my heart center. I hold it to my heart center, and I allow myself to start feeling the feelings that are connected to this tension with my wife. I don't push them away. I don't try to escape the discomfort of those feelings. I allow myself to feel them, no matter how uncomfortable. If I have to bawl, I'll let the tears just start to flow. I don't want to bypass any of it because we do too much of that. We've done way too much of that in our lives. So I don't bypass any of it. I let myself sit with that discomfort as long as it takes. At some point, I'll then, in a sense, pull back and allow myself to then become the observer. I'll allow myself to observe the situation, the feelings, without judgment. I've had countless out-of-body experiences now where, very similar to what near-death experiences, where you hear reports where they're like, I'm out of body and I'm suddenly standing in this environment and I feel connected to everything. And there's this being that comes, and then suddenly there's this holographic projection, like a screen comes out of a bush. There's always a screen coming out of a bush somewhere. You know, you're getting a life review, and they're giving you this life review, and they have this end-to-end information on your life, and you're seeing this review. It so fascinates me. But there's no, from the being that is showing me this, there's no judgment. They're just allowing me to, maybe when they're showing me an experience I've had where maybe, woohoo, hello, where maybe I've hurt somebody. My camera's doing weird stuff, so I'm just going to flow with it. So I wanted a close-up. How you doing? So they want to show me maybe when I've hurt somebody, and they let me in that moment actually feel what they felt. They let me feel exactly what that person felt. That is such mind-blowing medicine. But equally, they will sometimes show me moments where I've changed somebody's life for the better. And they let me feel that. They let me feel exactly what that meant to that person. They've allowed me to see the unfolding of that moment and what it meant years to come for that individual. That is so incredibly powerful. So in that moment, back in my body, and in that moment back in my body, in Ho'oponopono, doing the shadow work, and I'm that observer, I'm in that same mindset. There's no judgment. There's no blame. I'm just holding space for this part of myself. And it's at this point, I'll then start with the, I'm sorry, please forgive me. And this is now that petition to the divine. And this is where, in the Hawaiian tradition, something really magical happens. They have this concept of what's called mana, M-A-N-A. And it's this divine power starts to flow. This divine power starts to flow. It's almost like this thing's got some sort of commands where it's watching me, and it moves anyway. So this divine power of mana starts to flow. And this divine power starts to then transmute the negativity around the situation. It starts to transmute the erroneous memories that are attached to this situation. Starts to transmute it. That's what is now happening. And it's at that point, I mean, I can just continue, I'm sorry, please forgive me, until I genuinely feel the shift. And it's at that point I let go. And I love one of Dr. Hugh Lin's expressions. It's become one of my favorite expressions of his. He'll then say in that moment, you then let go and let God. You let go and let God. You get out of the way completely. It's at that point, I'll then go in, if I want to use that fourth phrase, and it makes a lot of sense to do so at that point, that gratitude. Thank you. Thank you to all the beings involved. Thank you for that moment. Thank you to my inner self, for the healing energies, to the mana, to the divine. A great expression of gratitude as that healing work now continues beyond me, outside of my, out of my hands. It's unstoppable now. It's in God's hands. It's unstoppable, now. It's in the hands of the divine. So, that's a process right there. That's a powerful Ho'oponopono process right there. There's a lot more I could unpack, but you could ask so many questions, to get to the wick of it, like you were asking about. But sometimes you could simply just ask for the energetic record. All right, Sonia, you could literally just ask for the energetic record. Because sometimes, like in Western psychology, we can, with something like, what is that analysis, the psychological analysis? What do they call it? Anybody? Oh, you're all muted. Psychoanalysis, whatever. You could be in that your whole life. You could be digging your entire life, because this is a collective. Everything in me is in you, and everything in you is in me, and everything in us is in the collective, and vice versa. We could just be digging. So psychoanalysis doesn't really work for me. Just asking for the energetic connection, that record. What is this connected to? What is this problem connected to? What is at the core of this situation? What I can and what I will do is I'll send to Flow, or actually I'll just make a post in the premium soul guides, as well as the free soul guides. I'll make a list of about 50 different questions that you could ask to get to the wick of what you're asking me now. Does that help?
That's really powerful.
Sonia, you there? Did you disappear on us?
Thank you so much, because my question had been, you don't know what you don't know. How are you aware of your blind spots? And you just have given me the gift of, you don't need to know, just go ask for the energetic record. So thank you.
In a lot of cases, we do know, but a lot of us haven't really learned to trust our inner voice, because we haven't done the healing work around trust that was broken in childhood. And I think until we do that inner work around trust, we will find it difficult. And trust is a powerful, sacred act. Without it, what are we left with without that? So for me, it's an important area to address with this shadow work, because without trust, that when that sacred trust was broken in childhood years, because people weren't being honest with us, we weren't being honest with other people, and there were various reasons for that. Some of it was protection mechanisms, such as, like, me as a child, my father was very abusive. He was an alcoholic, and he was very abusive. And sometimes I had to wear a mask to survive. I had several masks that I needed to wear at any given moment to survive around my father, because the distrust that I had, that child, there's a, in psychology, I can't remember the name of it, but there's this idea that as a child, you will continue to externalize everything, because the moment you realize, you will internalize the abuse. You will internalize, all that stuff, because the moment you externalize it and you think to yourself, wait a second, my dad's actually the problem. My dad isn't actually the ultimate protector. My dad isn't actually protecting me. My dad is actually, abusing me. And I stop internalizing this stuff. That becomes a bigger danger to me, because if I now know that my parents can't be trusted, if I now know as 5, 6-year-old that I could be in a lot of danger because these people haven't got it figured out. And that's why the children will continue to internalize this stuff. So for me as an adult, I find really doing the shadow work around that stuff and learning to trust myself and learning to trust the people that I now have around me truly do have my back. This will help me to actually unpack that internal guidance more and more, to allow myself to move through the doubt more effectively.
Yeah. And Sonia commented that that's intense. Yes, that's intense.
Thank you very much.
Really sorry about the close-up shot here, but
I think if you do something like this with your hands and you push it away like that, I think it will react. No, like both hands. It was doing it with you're kind of doing something like this and you slowly push away.
yeah,
I think
I'll just move my chair back a little bit.
your camera is too advanced, man. That's why
It's pretty advanced.
Pretty good stuff. Well, I
I
like what
hope
you
I'm-
said about that experience that you were talking about, where you were essentially experiencing the records, seeing how the other person felt from that experience that you had, and because it's very much exactly what people talk about when they have these near-death experiences, and they get the life review, and in the life review, it's always seen from the other person's perspective. How did you make people feel? I know, what good things did you do and what bad things did you do, and how did they feel, and how did that affect their life and their choices, and all of those things. The fact that we can do, have that kind of reviews before we die means that we have a chance to actually go back into our everyday life and change things and improve things and fix the relationships that aren't working or that needs healing before we actually die. That's really, really powerful.
It is, right? I mean, I think William Bowman, another amazing astral projection teacher, out-of-body teacher, and I think it's in his first book, Adventures Beyond the Body, where he says, we have a tool, same as we have like the internet. He kind of parallels it with the internet, where he says, with the internet these days, in this day and age, we can research our holiday destination before we go. We can literally use Google Maps to see the location. We can use Trustpilot to read reviews, of the place. So if we had a similar tool where we could explore the afterlife before we transcend death, how exciting, if we could have reviews, same as that, reviews of certain afterlife communities. Oh, wow, this one was amazing. They had the pool really warmed up when I arrived. And, it's really, to me, it is really fascinating to have access to these mini life reviews, to have access to these realms, and including the lower realms. I did a little ceremony last night, in the quiet of the storm. And I really reaffirmed my vow to my connection to all the worlds, to all the dimensions within the Earth life system, including those lower worlds. Because, for first thing, those lower worlds are not an exact depiction of what, some of the religious beliefs would have us, think. It's, you can say that there are some very dark places. There's no doubting that, but a majority of what we're dealing with is these environments take on the overriding mood of the residents of those environments. So if you've got a lot of people who are experiencing a lot of inner darkness, and they're a vibrational match to each other, and they're in an environment, a post-earth environment, which is a vibrational match, and they're all in this together, and they're creating this environment that literally is an expression, an outer expression of their inner world. And they can literally be and the things that are tormenting them in those environments are of their own making and their own projections. And when I'm out of body in these places, you talk about compassion. This is when my capacity for compassion reaches its maximum. My heart is just, it's bursting wide open. And I would say one of my biggest purposes now here on the physical earth is my connection to those lower worlds and the work that I feel called to do for those lower worlds. It's wonderful to open up with these experiences and visit these higher planes, these planes of great what's the perfect word I'm looking for here? Gosh, sorry, I got a bit of a brain drain, but that resonance that you can feel, that harmony, that's the word I want right there. The harmony that you can feel on some of those very higher dimensions, even what I would express as being above the astral planes, a true state of harmony where all the beings are taking full responsibility for their thoughts, their feelings, their actions. They're truly united, and the harmony that you experience, it's uplifting. And yes, I experience that too now and again. I need that too. I take a break from my mortal self now and again through an out-of-body experience so I can transcend the drama of everyday life, not to escape, but to experience that harmony so that I can bring it back and have a better relationship in the physical world. It's this constant anchor for me. And especially the work I do, like I say, connected to the lower worlds where light like us is being called, and we have a unique position within reality. We have a physical body, and yet we can access all those worlds. In reverse, you have very advanced beings or just even our guides that can sometimes find it more challenging, believe it or not, to exist in those lower worlds, not to exist, but to temporarily be in those lower worlds. We as physical beings have a unique opportunity to work across the entire spectrum of the Earth life system. And that's what I love about astral projection. It is a portal to all of it.
That's awesome.
Yep.
When you talk about those lower worlds, I remember going to a place like that where it was like the environment looked pretty normal, but the people there were all sick, and they all had very similar sickness. They all had like really, really bad skin. They were walking very strangely, and it just seemed like there was a plague or something that took place that shifted, and the environment, the vibe of the environment was very much like the people.
Yeah. Really, I mean, that's what it can be like. And what I find fascinating, when you encounter someone that is in a very dark place and they are being tormented by their own inner darkness being projected outwardly, It's interesting to observe that at some point, all that negativity that's driving all of those projections eventually gets completely spent. And at some point, it's almost like they fall into a kind of sleep. And then the self-correcting nature of reality kicks in. And it can transport them, as an example, reincarnate them back into the physical world. No life review as such, no sitting down with, a guide to go through things, but a change of scenery, an opportunity to start again. Our reality is far more dynamic and complex than people realize. Even when people talk about things like soul traps or entities that are feeding off of our negativity, these are simplified, incredibly simplified oversimplification of a very complex spiritual ecosystem.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's move on to Dipti now then.
Hello, everyone. And very beautiful and powerful messages, Falcon. Thank you so much. As always, your sessions are very enlightening, I would say. So thanks for everything that you said. I can actually really resonate with what you're saying here. Like in America, everything is very individualized. And this is not my problem, is something that I hear very often here. And I think we need to shift from that. But my question specifically is, how to navigate the situation when you are actually on the other side of the spectrum. And I'm actually talking about myself, where you kind of feel like everything is your problem, especially as a healer, as a medical doctor. It's kind of hard when, I try everything out for my patients, my clients, and still I'm not able to solve their problem. So there is like kind of this guilt where you feel like you have not been able to solve the problem. So how do you balance that, like that feeling of taking up being responsible for the problems and trying to solve it, and then feeling the guilt that comes with not being able to completely solve the problem? I think I know the answer to this in my own mind, but of course, I want to hear from you and your expert opinion on this.
Okay. First, Dipti, thank you. It's an amazing question, but I actually do want to hear yours first, because this is one of the things that Dr. Lin of the Ho'oponopono would actually teach in his classes, reminding people that we already have the answers that we need. And this is one of the things, as I grow into my elder years, I'm 55 this year, and as I grow more into my elder years, one of my goals is to become an elder that can hold a very safe space to where people can figure it out for themselves. Not because I don't want to share wisdom and guidance, but I want to show people that they already have the answers. And I will give you an answer. I will give you an independent answer. Don't worry about that. But I think it is important for you to share with us what you feel is the answer.
Absolutely. So I do a lot of reflection on my problem. So I feel like the answer to this question is to kind of let go of so to have compassion for myself, and to kind of let go of this attachment to outcome that, I'm going to solve their problem. I think the part of this whole spectrum is that I feel that healing has multiple layers to it. And right now, I'm kind of just dealing with the physical aspects, but I also understand the non-physical aspects, but not everyone is open to exploring that non-physical aspects. And I think that's where my frustration or kind of the barrier comes. But really, to answer your question, for me, I feel like I need to have letting go of that expectation that my job is to kind of provide my best. And I shouldn't be attached to this outcome, which is because everyone's thought and everything is different. So I don't have to kind of like really try to fix everything, but be compassionate about that. And let the other person be on their journey, because their journey could be like different, and I don't need to control that. That's my answer, like in my mind, but I would like to hear yours.
I think it's a very good answer, Dipti. And I think it is for sure the medicine that you need. I think it's very powerful in letting go, for sure, not being controlling, because this is healing work isn't about control. Healing work is about responsibility, not control. So I love the idea that you have intuitively adopted a very deep Ho'oponopono core principle, which is when a problem comes to you, let's say if a friend comes to me with a problem, and let's say that friend already, maybe they might have a minor understanding of the Ho'oponopono. I would say to them, just go and Ho'oponopono, that problem. No, that's not how the Ho'oponopono works. If my friend who does understand the Ho'oponopono comes to me and starts sharing their problem with me, their problem actually becomes my problem, because it wouldn't have come to me otherwise. It wouldn't have come to me otherwise. So what that means is there's resonance somewhere within me. In order for that to come to me, there's resonance. So first and foremost, with the Ho'oponopono, we're taking responsibility for what is resonating within me that has brought this to my awareness. All right? And in doing that, you're acknowledging the interconnectedness of life. And as you take responsibility in that moment for what resonates within you that has shown up when that problem was presented to you, as you start to heal what is within you, classically, you start to create healing around you. So when we're doing the Ho'oponopono as an example, we are not, we're not healing other people. That's not what's happening. We're not solving their problems. We're healing those parts of us that resonate with their problem, with the situation, with the news headline, with a situation that we find ourselves observing on the street. If I'm walking along the street and suddenly I see a fight between two grown men, and they're two boys actually, but grown men bodies, and they're having a fist fight. I'll ask myself, what is within me that has created this situation? And I'm not saying I'm responsible for the situation. I'm saying there's something in me. In order for me to see this, there has to be something in me that is aligned with this in some way. And I'm going to take advantage, not advantage, I'm going to take the opportunity to do the healing work on what is within me. So I can maybe do some simple on-the-go Ho'oponopono. I can just use the 4 phrases that have been popularized, or numerous techniques that I've created for myself. But I can start to take responsibility for that. And one of the bigger things I would say, and I love the fact, the self-reflection that you do. I think, again, this is a core principle of the Ho'oponopono. It is all about self-reflection. That's what I was just saying. What is within me that has created this situation? What is within me that is causing my friend to have this problem? And you'll find that as you start to clear the energy around you, it starts to clear the energy around them too. And some people might say, well, you can't do healing work, without other people's permission. Again, you're not doing healing work for them. That's not what's happening. It's not like I'm a surgeon where I see somebody on the street that, clearly has melanoma, and I'm like, okay, I just walk up to with my scalpel, and I'm like, just hold still. I'm gonna start a surgery on you without their permission. So, that you can relate to with something like Reiki as an example. A Reiki practitioner wouldn't just send healing to somebody, Reiki energy to somebody without first gaining their permission. It's the same with the surgeon. We need to get somebody's consent. But with the Ho'oponopono, we're not doing healing work for other people. We're doing it for ourselves. And a secondary effect is being gained by others through our work, because it's a practice of love as a force beyond yourself. That's what's happening. We are extending, by doing our healing work, we are extending love to others. Love becomes a force beyond ourself. Another aspect of this is you don't need to do this alone. I love the guilt. I actually love the guilt that you feel. That's not a bad feeling. Guilt is a motivating energy. The thing that I'd be worried about if you were feeling when you were, thinking about other people's problems and whether you can be part of the solution, if you then started feeling shame, then I would be thinking there's an issue here. But guilt is not the problem. Guilt is never the issue. Guilt is one of those things. It's one of those things that reminds us, okay, like if I do something wrong, guilt, the feeling of guilt reminds me that, hey, I need to take responsibility for what I just did. I need to set this straight. Whereas shame will make me feel like it doesn't matter even if I say sorry, I'm only going to do it again because I'm the problem. You see where I'm going with this? I mean, guilt is not a bad feeling. So I wouldn't beat yourself up for having those feelings. That's part of the inner guidance. But we don't have to do this healing work alone. And that's why, again, I really cherish these practices. And I want to really make sure everybody's aware here how much this stuff is in alignment with the other two tools that we haven't got a chance to properly go in depth with the questions yet, such as astral projection and meditation. These three tools are so highly aligned, it's insane. And with the Ho'oponopono, with healing work, we're not meant to do this healing work alone. Same as we're not supposed to astral project alone. There's not a single time I go out of body these days where I feel alone. Not once. I always feel the energy of guides. Even if they're not visible, they're there. They're aware. Because they don't live in cyclical reality. Their reality is far more dynamic than our cyclical reality where we experience time in the way that we do. They know when I'm going to go out of body. There's a part of my higher self, what Robert Monroe would call the I there, knows my every move. And it can place an aspect of its consciousness, of its awareness, along for the ride when I'm out of body. And I always feel it. I'm always attuned to it. I'm not doing those journeys alone. When I'm doing a healing work, I don't expect to do it alone. I'm doing that healing work with the divine. So if I see a problem that doesn't seem to be resolving, this is again where I will sit and I will invite a very big energy. If I'm not just going to hook into the divine itself, if I need something that I feel is more relatable to me in a sense of like I can get out of body and meet a guide. All right, I can see them. They can take on the form I need for that interaction, because that's how a lot of my higher dimensional guides work. They can show up as a hippopotamus in the experience if they want to, and they can just talk to me. We can have some tea in an astral cafe as a hippopotamus, or I can meet them on a higher dimensional level, and they will just take on a very basic humanoid kind of shape, but they're just bursting with light. They can't really contain their light. They're just these light beings. So if I need something more relatable, I can go to that too. But for me, I'm very comfortable with this idea of consciousness and the interconnected web and the power that is held in that energy. So when I'm doing healing work, like I said, it's between me and the divine. And I'm healing what is within me, what's resonated within me that needs to be healed. And then it's being placed in the hands of the divine. And like you say, at that point, you're letting go of the outcome, because the healing work, just like manifestation work, 99% of it we can't see. It's taking place behind the scenes. When I've done a manifestation meditation, then I go and look in the mirror. I'm still seeing the same man. I'm seeing the image projected from yesterday's thinking. But that intention is doing the work behind the scenes to create the image for tomorrow. And the healing work is in the divine's hands now. I've placed it there. I've taken responsibility for what resonated in me. I placed it there. It's in divinity's hands, and the unfolding will take place in that divine timing. And I trust that. I have absolutely faith in that. And I've seen it work like that all the time.
Nice.
Yeah, I think I agree with you about the guilt part, because when you have that guilt, that pushes you to do more, to explore more, and that's how I keep helping my patients. So yeah, there is no shame, just the guilt part. But at one extent, it becomes an obsession. So that's where I kind of have to balance it out. I agree with you about your spirit guides, because I did meet my spirit guides in my astral, and they shifted in front of me, and they took me in a hospital where we were rounding, and that kind of gave me the validation that they are with me in my clinical decision making, in my work, the healing work that I do. So I do connect with them, and I agree. I probably need to tap into their energy more after listening to you. So thank you for all of that. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. And Dipti, I want to just round it off with this. I can sense how powerful of an out-of-body explorer you are. You are very powerful, and this is not your first lifetime where you've explored beyond the physical while incarnate. This is not by far the first lifetime. And this is why you're so powerful with it in this lifetime. And the reason I'm saying this is because I feel when you get out of body, if you really want to see this work in its fullest, this healing work, for your patients, become the multidimensional medic you were meant to be. All right.
You just spoke like my thoughts, because that's what I want to do. I want to be a multi-dimensional healer, and I know I'm not there yet, but I'm hopeful that I'll get there soon. So
I can feel it. You'll get there, and I think set it as a astral projection task. Set yourself, several astral projection. Well, just set one for now. Choose a case and make that your astral projection healing task. When you get out of body and you feel yourself really grounded into the experience, it doesn't matter to me whether it's the out of body experience is taking on the form of a lucid dream or an out of body experience itself in a non-consensus or consensus environment. It doesn't matter to me. It never matters to me whether it's any of those things. What matters is how conscious and grounded I am in the experience itself. Those are the only things that matter. Nothing else matters. All right. And when I get really conscious, really grounded, I can then drop into meditation in that state, and everything is amplified 100 times minimum. And I know you've probably experienced something like that. So can you imagine in that state, doing this healing work, including the Ho'oponopono in that state, that medical intuitive work? I mean, it is just going to amplify in profound ways, which is then going to create energetic pathways into your etheric body, because you can't have these governing patterns as above, so below, without it filtering downstream into the physical. That principle of as above, so below is a powerful one, and you will witness it time and time again the more you trust these out-of-body journeys into these, what am I talking about? Set the healing task, the out-of-body task, to go to the healing realms on the high astral planes. Go to these healing realms, connect with these communities, make them your allies, ask for them to train you. What am I thinking?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I've been thinking to do that, but I will make it my priority now. Thank you so much, Falcon. I appreciate it. Truly.
You will do great, Dipti. You will do great. They have questions. So, Falcon, here's a challenge for you. You have to manage 2 people in 15 minutes.
Why don't we just go for 3 then? 3 people in 15 minutes. You're going to challenge me.
I jump in just to tell Falcon that my question was already answered, because it was the serendipitous, and thank you for your very inspiring, beautiful answer.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, Dan.
And over to Max. So
over to Max. When you're ready, Max.
Max, you want to take yourself off mute?
I'll do that for him here. Oh, okay.
All right.
There we go.
Does it work?
Yeah, it works.
Yeah, good job with this training display here. I appreciate the knowledge base that I was feeling and picking up. I noticed you were mentioning a lot about the Hano.
So it's Ho'oponopono.
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 Yeah, is that something that are we going to display in this training, or that you guys have thought about somehow? Because I don't really know much except for what I've heard from you, which seems like pretty fascinating training. Is that something that you guys plan on incorporating within this study?
Yeah, I can answer that. I think healing is always going to be something that we want to focus on, because you cannot get very far if you are not very healed. If you have stuff that's holding you back, there's a lot of trauma, there's problems. Healing is very important. So it's definitely something that I want to develop more on the platform, on Soul Guides.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm really glad to hear that, because I think, if we're, I'll say this, with astral projection, it ramped up for me. It absolutely amped up when I started taking responsibility for my shadow.
Responsibility for your shadow?
The stuff that's been repressed, the stuff that has been pushed deep down inside, that I'm ashamed of, that my mom and dad was ashamed of, that society was ashamed of, all the stuff, that was just hanging out and other people felt was inappropriate. And maybe some of it, needs to be, we do need to have self-control, there's no doubt. But there are these parts of us that have experienced trauma. There's these parts of us that have experienced, shame. There's parts of us that feel very disconnected now. And it's going in and facing this stuff with compassion, with love, with forgiveness. And it's an inside job. It's all an inside job. And this is what I love about healing work. And this isn't just Ho'oponopono. This is healing work across the board. It's taking responsibility, because it's all an inside job. You could say, even if there's a problem between you and somebody else, you could say, yeah, but I'm only 10% of the problem. Well, then you deal with the 10% that's yours. And then you'll actually then find out, wait a second, I need to take 100% responsibility for this, because you become the bigger spiritual man or woman in the room. All right. You become the spiritual adult in the room. And that is so incredibly important when it comes to just showing up in life in general. Whether it's astral projection, meditation, everyday experiences, it's taking responsibility. Because like I said, when I reach the out-of-body experiences, when I have the out-of-body experiences on the very highest realms, and I experience that harmony, that's because everybody there is taking 100% responsibility. They're not looking around them and saying, hey, that guy's only taking 90% responsibility. Everybody's taking 100% from their perspective.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Healing is very important. And a lot of times students cannot even get out of body if there is fear. Today I had a session with one of my students where they had a belief system very deep inside their subconscious that they're not safe. They don't feel safe in the world. So if you have that belief system that you don't feel safe, you're not going to feel safe going out of body either, because as above, so below, like like Falcon said. So you need to heal that limiting belief, that blockage that says that you're not safe. You need to get over that. You need to, and there's, it's not something that you just do with conscious conversation like this. It's something that you do in deep meditation. It's something that you do with hypnosis or with other healing modalities like Psych-K, which is something that I'm very passionate about recently, because it's a tool that you can learn to reprogram your own subconscious mind in a very quick way, so that you can shift these limiting beliefs to empowering beliefs, and then you can have a lot of experiences.
And I would say, Max, that I've already mentioned it to Flo, and I've mentioned it inside the premium community. More and more, I will make posts and I will make comments. I'll interact in ways that are always aligned with the healing work with these practices like astral projection, because like Flo just pointed out, there's a part of you that's feeling fear, and these are unacknowledged fears. These aren't things that we're aware of. Most of these are unacknowledged fears. These are unconscious. There's a sub-personality inside there that, like Flo said, it's difficult enough for that part of us to show up in this reality, let alone blasting it off into another dimension of reality, into the unknown, completely into another dimension of another unknown. It's kicking and screaming. It's that thing that will literally make you keep moving your body, will keep blocking you from having an out-of-body experience, because that needs some integration. And it needs, what does it need? Any imbalance, it's love. Any imbalance is love. Any situation that is out of harmony, that's in disharmony, it is missing one thing. It's missing love. And it's requiring somebody to step up and take responsibility for being the one to give first. And that's what a spiritual adult does, gives first. And that's why I love the Ho'oponopono, because some of these stories that should be legends, not just like experiences, like they should be legends. Like Dr. Hugh Lin with the Hawaiian Mental Hospital. That's legendary stuff. One man basically taking responsibility. But, and yes, and that's not to take away from the doctors and the nurses and the psychologists, who are working in the hospital. I'm talking about after years where none of the traditional Western psychology was working. None of the traditional care was working, to the point they called in Dr. Hugh Lin. And this healing work, which was not traditional in the Western sense, but it was traditional to the ancient Hawaiians. And after 1 year of service to that hospital, to the individuals, whether they were patients or staff, everything turned on its head for the better. Because he saw that, even within ourselves, we have a mental asylum within ourselves, you could say. And it's this part that needs to take responsibility. That's me, this part that's facing you now. I'm taking responsibility for that inner asylum. If there's a part of me that's in fear, I want to hold its hand. I want to sit with it. I want to lean into that discomfort. I don't want to bypass it anymore. I want to take responsibility for
it. Yeah, that's another level, is to be able to take the fear. There's one level of taking the fear and facing it, but then there seems to be a whole nother level of taking the fear and facing it with love. So that's something that I've just started to dabble with, but still got a ways to go on that.
I agree, Max. I agree. But this is the thing. It's progress, not perfection. Make that your mantra. All right. Progress. I think you already have. You're already embodying that. It's progress. It's not perfection. And this is what it's all about. It's one step at a time. I had somebody message me just yesterday saying that, after a year, they've taught themselves how to fly, not in full lucid dreams, but semi-conscious dreams. So they have an extra level of difficulty because it's not fully conscious, but they have literally taught themselves how to fly. And
how to fly
in the dream state,
Yeah.
But hey,
Not
come
like-
on, there are monks in the, you know, in the high plains of Tibet that practice the art of dreaming and sleep, where they practice walking through walls in non-physical reality so they can walk through walls in physical reality, because it is an illusion. It is an illusion.
Yeah.
How can something come from nothing? We're dealing with consciousness. It's non-physical by nature. Physical reality is a highly densified thought form.
Right.
And
So yeah, no, I wondered about what you actually said. There is a way to perfect it, the practice, to bring it to this reality. That's I've read this, so that's very interesting subject. Something
I want people to understand, though, that as above, so below, we're talking about the governing principles of reality, the patterns that exist from the very highest levels. It doesn't go the other way. You know, we don't, you know, you could say, well, it goes a little way the other way. Like, for example, when we leave this reality through the transition of death of the physical body, our post-Earth reality is going to be a match of pretty much where we left off here. I'm not saying, you know, if you die in New York City, you're going to be in a New York City counterpart reality. I'm just saying you know, like the expressions, wherever you go, there you are. There's work to be done. If there's work to be done, there's work to be done. But in those very highest dimensional levels, there are no distortions like evil. Okay, evil is not inherently part of the darkness. You know, when we're talking about the true yin yang Chinese philosophy of light and dark duality, we're not talking about something being adversarial. We're talking about a dynamic that is complementary. If you stay awake for 20 hours in physical reality and only get 4 hours sleep, you're going to create distortions. If you stay asleep for 20 hours a day and only awake for 4 hours, you're going to create distortions in your waking life. If after, you know, you experience a great loss in your life and you stay stuck in the grieving process and do not move through the process, let's say you get sad because something's changed, and then it goes into depression. The sadness is an everyday part of life. It's part of the human experience. It's within the yin-yang balance. The distortion of despair, of depression, those are not the yin-yang balance. All right. So I want, you know, to really be clear on that idea of as above, so below, because sometimes people like to flip it the other way. You know, it only goes so far the other way, because those distortions do not exist. Those illusions do not exist in the highest realms. That's why reaching for the highest realms, tapping into the higher realms, have so much power attached to it, because they're beyond the distortions.
So I know healing is a popular thing that you can bring back, obviously, from the dream realms and the alternative realities. But you know, there are some of the masters you read about all the time that have done miraculous things in this physical reality as well. You know, Jesus, Buddha, and apparently there's a lot more that have done it that we've never even heard of or even know existed.
Can I lay something on you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Have you read any of Robert Monroe's books?
I have not. I did go through the Gateway training, but I haven't been reading any of his books yet.
Okay. Well, look, you've done the Gateway training, so get his books and maybe start with book number 3, Ultimate Journey. All right. Because reading the first book first, I think sometimes people reading that book will think, why on earth would I want to go out of body? Because he's so raw in his first book. He wears himself on his sleeve in his first book, and almost to the point where I would, like I said, think, why would anybody want to go out of body after reading that first book? I mean,
that's his first book. What was it called?
No, his first book is called Journeys Beyond the Body.
Oh, what was the one you were just talking about?
Ultimate Journey. That's the third one. All right. And in the third book, there's an experience of his. There's several experiences, but if you like connect the dots, he's saying some fascinating stuff. He's encoded that book with some really powerful guidance for us. You know, he's an out-of-body explorer to a magnitude, to a level I've not personally achieved, and I've achieved a lot with my journeys. But I still look up to that man. You know, he's transitioned now, and I've met him several times in the out-of-body state on the other side. But one of his experiences where he talks about meeting this character he calls he, she. I'll sum it up really quickly, very quickly, because I know we've got a time limitation because we're all here in physical reality. So he goes out of body and he says to his guides, you know what I want? You know, after years of I guess, requesting this particular experience. And they're like, yes, Mr. Monroe, we can make that happen now. And he's like, yeah, you know what I want? And they're like, yes, you want to meet the most evolved human currently in time space. All right. And he's like, yeah, that's what I want. And they're like, we can take you to them now. And so they move back towards the physical plane. And their vantage point, here they are in the etheric field, in an office or just in a room. And there's a desk and there's a physical human sitting behind the desk. And Monroe's reading the energy of this physical human. And he's like, this is interesting. In one moment, it's a perfect expression of masculine. In the next moment, it's a perfect expression of the feminine. But there's this oscillation that's just going on. This perfect oscillation of masculine, feminine, masculine, feminine. And Monroe's like, I've never encountered this. What do I call this human? A he, she? And then that's when the individual behind the desk telepathically cuts in and says, oh, I've never been called that before, you know? And Monroe's like, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, you know, forgive me, you know, that kind of energy. And this ultimate human, like you talk about, Buddha, Jesus, and this time period that is being referenced in that experience is our time period right now. All right. So he's saying this being is in the world right now in our timeline. And the being says that this evolved human says to Monroe, go ahead, read me. My energy field is wide open. Just read me. Go for it. And Monroe's like, fine, I'm jumping in. And he's like, okay, first thing I sense here, and this is, I'm finding really hard to believe. I'm really struggling with this, but I sense that you've lived one consecutive human lifetime of 1,800 years. How is that possible? And this ultimate human is like, I'm not human as you know human to be anymore, you know? And Monroe continues to read me. He's like, and I sense that you're a bartender, you're a university lecturer, you're an ambulance driver. How can you do all of these things? And you'll notice all of these things are service related. And he's like, again, I don't experience being human in the same way that you do. All right. And he's reading this being and reading this being, and it's so fascinating. And then the experience trails off eventually. Monroe's back in his body. And then I think it's the next time he's out of body, he's with his inspect friends, you know, these parts of his his higher self, these very advanced parts of him. And they're discussing these type of humans. And Monroe reckoned in that moment that there are at least 4,000 human beings with exceptional abilities that are among us right now. And probably at least 500, you can whittle that down to a 500 that match the MO of that being he was in the room with on that experience. That excites me. That just doesn't give me hope. It really excites me, but I don't see that their role here in the sacred crucible of Earth, I don't see their role as being saviors. I see their role as being guides, on the quiet guides. You could be sitting next to an old lady on the train, and it could be one of them, and you would never know it. You would never know it. But maybe in that moment, they're They're pulling some little bit of worry out of your energy field, just smoothing the flow a little bit, because they're not here to change the system. You don't change the school changes you. All right. And that's important, I think, here in the what I know to be a school, because it is a crucible. You know, other souls come here from other systems. They're not born in this system. They come from other systems, and they're observing it from outside the system. You know, maybe they're sitting there in the place Monroe called where the outer ring, where the cluster of the I theirs, the cluster of the soul groups bond together while they project aspects of themselves down into physical reality and all the dimensions in between, such as the astral planes. You know, they're jumping in, they're getting their feet wet. They become somehow enmeshed with the system itself. And now, like Monroe says, to become unenmeshed, to graduate the system, you need to achieve liftoff. What is that liftoff? That's your inner vibration. What is your inner vibration based on? What is this spiritual liberation based on? It's based on you learning to navigate this system. Like I said at the very beginning of this journey together today, you learning that you are the modern mystic, walking through this world of duality while seeing with the eyes of divinity, which is unity. You know, this is to be a vessel for the mystery itself, the great mystery itself. This is powerful medicine for me and my life and my way of life. You know, I'm not perfect at it. I still find myself blaming now and again. I find myself judging now and again, but the difference is I pull back from it sooner than I used to. I still have ego and I still show ego, but I show it a lot less. It's progress, not perfection. And I take, like I said, great comfort knowing, because I've met some of them, of these exceptional human beings that you could say have already graduated, but they didn't leave the system. They remained. And everything else that's going on, such as, you know, the way that we project onto non-human intelligences that we don't understand, the Earth crucible, the Earth school, you know, it's literally an emotionally driven evolutionary path. We have non-human intelligences that come to this system, that monitor this system, that make adjustments to the system, that manipulate the system. Everything's interconnected though. And ultimately, they are just so damn curious about this emotionally driven evolutionary pathway that they don't understand, that they didn't evolve through. And that's why some of these non-humans seem so cold, so calculated. But they haven't got curious enough yet. They haven't fully enmeshed themselves in a system that's going to blow their minds, that is going to change them in ways that only the sacred crucible of this earth plane can change them. You don't change the school, not even them. The school changes you.
And that's a beautiful place to end for today. Thank you for watching our live event. Like and subscribe for more awesome content. And go and check out our premium community. And let's get you out of body, flying in the astral soon. Check out the link below this video.